All right, welcome back to Velshi and Rule. The contentious race for Georgia's governor is getting even more fiery. Brian Kemp, the Republican candidate who also happens to be Georgia's Secretary of State and in charge of the election, is accusing state Democrats of trying to hack voter registration files.
No fact behind that, no evidence.
None. He has not presented any. Kemp is now asking for a federal investigation. He's called in the FBI, by the way, but as you said, he's got no evidence. The FBI at some point is going to say, give us something, tell us somewhere. They're going to look into it anyway. Democrats are calling it unethical and yet another attempt at voter suppression.
For weeks, Kemp has been facing accusations of trying to suppress the minority vote. His opponent, Democrat Stacey Abrams, would be the nation's first black female governor if she wins. And these voter suppression allegations are not just a problem in Georgia. Activists have recently raised concerns in North Carolina, Kansas, North Dakota, and Texas. The alleged tactics affecting most minority communities. This is 2018,
right.
Please.
This shouldn't be a problem. I want to bring in NBC's Rahema Ellis live in Marietta, Georgia. Rahema, Kemp announced these allegations about voter hacking 2 days before the election. He is the Secretary of State. He does oversee elections. There are a lot of people who think that's a little weird.
Could have recused himself from that, though.
Yeah, well, but the point is, this is kind of, he's been on the wrong side of this issue versus Stacey Abrams for a few years now. Stacey Abrams has been fighting for increased voter rights in Georgia. What's going on the ground there?
Well, what's going on the ground here among voters and some of the folks that we've been talking to, one person, I wrote it down, she says specifically she thinks this is dirty politics. Another person said that they are trying to confuse voters. Another person said that they don't trust anybody at this point. So voters are overwhelmingly saying that they are tired of this. They want this race to be over. Other people are also saying that they do understand that Georgia does have a history of voter suppression. What exactly is happening in this particular race, some of them are saying it still remains to be seen. But everyone here is saying they think it's important that people go to the polls because this race, as you're talking about, between Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp, it is neck and neck at this point. And if ever one vote counted, it certainly is going to count in this particular race. 53,000 some odd people, according to one estimate, are on the pending status in terms of whether or not they'll be allowed to vote. And in other places, people are wondering whether their absentee ballots are going to be counted appropriately. So, again, on the ground, what they're saying here, guys, is that they think something is happening here. They don't know exactly what it is, but voters are tired of it. They want to talk about some issues that you've been talking about. They mentioned education, transportation, immigration, and health care. And so many people that I talk to at the supermarket and other places are saying they wish the candidates were talking more about those issues.
All right, let's bring Tremaine Lee in. He is in Atlanta, Georgia. Tremaine, Rahema just said something to us that stuck out to me. One voter she spoke to said, "I don't trust anyone." Before Brian Kemp came forward with this, where there's no facts, that there's no evidence that he's shown that now maybe Democrats are hacking the election, is he successful in doing exactly that to voters, confusing them, just making them feel like the whole system at large doesn't work?
My vote won't count or something like that.
That's right. When you think about the cloud of suspicion and concern around this election in particular, where the margin is so tight and so thin, and it may very well come down to young voters who are already kind of feeding into the social media frenzy around this race. But it's not lost on many people in Georgia with such a long history of racist voter suppression. And the candidate in Republican Brian Kemp, who has been alleged to have taken part in some suppression into now. But young people may very well decide and determine the outcome of this race. Between Georgia and Texas, early voting among those under 30 years old already up 400% compared to 2014, the last time they voted in midterms. But to go back to your question, whether the suppression activity actually works, it's the swirl, the frenzy around it that may very well depress some folks who are already on the margins about coming out to vote regardless.
All right, Tremaine, obviously there's a little bit of context here other than the fact that Kemp is the Secretary of State. But Stacey Abrams this has been what she's been involved in for years. She has been trying to get greater voter turnout in Atlanta and try to get these voter ID laws changed. Where does that stand right now? Because there are a whole bunch of people who, again, aren't sure whether they're going to be able to cast a ballot if they go out to vote tomorrow.
Well, there is a lot of concern and a lot of fear because even those who are in a pending status in terms of their registration, tens of thousands of people who registered by the deadline still have yet to be cleared whether they can actually vote or not. And so the suppression activity that we've seen across the South that kind of emerged under the Obama era when Republican-led legislatures across the country enacted the voter ID laws, as well as some of the old school disenfranchisement activities, including felony disenfranchisement, really disrupted whole voting blocks across the South. Now, as you mentioned, Stacey Abrams has been critical in Georgia for many years in terms of trying to not only bring in new voters, but enfranchise those who lost their rights. Now, again, when you're talking about the most marginalized voters, young people, the elderly, we're talking about folks who were around in the Jim Crow South who may or may not have birth certificates to show and prove who they are. This has had a detrimental effect for decades. But now, as the race is tightening, we'll see if those suppression activities or the barriers between folks and their vote and the franchise chips away 3, 4, 5, 10,000 people. That may sway one way or the other.
All right, Tremaine, thanks very much. Tremaine Lee for us in Atlanta.
And Rahima Ellis down there in Georgia as well.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.